The Golden Years.
Hello, this is Jack McDonald welcoming you once again to the Golden Years. This week, two champions meet each other across the span of the Golden Years as we take a look at Rossland's special place in the great white world of skiing. In nature's bounties, Rossland's Red Mountain was twice endowed. First it was the riches of the yellow gold of its fabulous mines. Then it was the white gold of the winter slopes. Red Mountain's place in the ski world spans almost 3/4 of a century. On one side of this interval stands a giant of a man. On the other, a pert young lady who is a giant in her own right. Olaus Jeldness, or Olaus Jeldness to Rosslanders, introduced skiing to Red Mountain in 1897. And 3 years later won the ski championships held in Canada at Rossland. In 1967, Red Mountain's Nancy Greene flashed down the ski slopes of 2 continents to emerge champion woman skier of the world. When Olaus Jeldness introduced skiing to Rossland, it was a sport so new to this part of the world that the Rossland miner described Jeldness skis as a Norwegian device that is simply a pair of ungainly boards, 4 inches wide and about 10 feet long, with the front ends turned slightly up. Nancy Greene, on the other hand, represents a day when skiing has become a highly specialized skill, and the equipment has taken on a sophistication that Jeldness probably never could have foreseen. Olaus Jeldness has long since passed on to the land where the ski slopes never end. In accordance with his last request, his ashes were scattered on the top of Red Mountain, and it is said that the spirit of Jeldness still inhabits the mountain that he loves so well. Today, we have world champion Nancy Greene with us in the studio, and she is going to attempt something unusual. She is going to talk with the spirit of the great Olaus Jeldness. Come with us now, then, as through the magic of radio, we fade back to the time of Olaus Jeldness. Nancy, welcome to the Golden Years. It's an honor to have you with us.
Oh, I'm very pleased to be here.
Are you all set to try a trip back into time?
I sure am. It should be very interesting.
Then let's go.
Oh, the studio is gone. We're on top of Red Mountain. It looks different.
It is different. We're back at the turn of the century.
It's bright moonlight. The lights are on in the town below, but it looks so different.
Hello there. Hello there. Look, there's a man coming toward us. He's on strange-looking skis, and he's pushing with a big pole. He has a large mustache, and he's wearing a bright tousled toque, and a big Mackinaw coat with his trouser legs tucked into the top of big, heavy overshoes.
Hello there. Hello there.
Oh, you must be Mr. Jeldness.
And you must be Nancy Greene. Well, they tell me you are a champion woman skier of the world. This is wonderful, and you're such a little girl. This is marvelous. You see, in my day, women didn't ski. Their skirts were too long. They dragged in the snow. Now tell me, where did you first start to ski?
Well, I first started to ski here in Red Mountain. It was when I was very little. My parents skied, and they taught me how to ski when I was only about 3 years old.
Oh, wonderful. Me too. I was on skis as soon as I could walk. When did you start to race?
Well, I started racing when I was young, too. In fact, the first race I went into was in a winter carnival in 1947 when I was about 4 years old.
Well, sir, I know. I was only 15 years old when I won the jumping championship of the Great Normoor competition in Norway. I jumped 92 feet, and that record stood for over 10 years.
Oh, yes, Mr. Jeldness, you're a Norwegian.
Yeah, I was born in Stangvik, Norway. I came to Rossland in 1896. I was 38 years old by that time.
Did you come right to Rossland from Norway?
Oh, no. I was in Spitsbergen first. I worked for the Arctic Coal Company of Boston. Do you know, I once erected the Stars and Stripes and claimed a little piece of land on Spitsbergen for Uncle Sam in the name of the Arctic Coal Company. Then I worked in Colorado. I was superintendent of a silver mine there.
Well, what brought you to Rossland?
I heard of the gold mines here, yeah. And I also heard of the wonderful ski slopes on Red Mountain. Maybe even if there hadn't been no gold, the ski slopes would have brought me here. You know, I opened up the Velvet Mine when I first came to Rossland.
Oh, Mr. Jeldness, is it true that you introduced skiing to Rossland?
Yeah, that's true. I did introduce skiing to Rossland. Do you know that nobody skied when I first came here? Everybody used snowshoes. I soon changed that. You and I know they're nothing like skis. Do you know that 3 years after I got here, there was enough interest in skiing to have the first Canadian ski championships held in Rossland? That was in 1900. They were held during the Rossland Winter Carnival. Ah, those carnivals were wonderful, too. They last a whole week. We had special trains to bring all the people from everywhere. Do you know the Canadian Championships were held in Rossland every winter for 20 years after that?
Oh, yes. And you won them, too, didn't you? You won them in 1900.
Yeah, I did, Nancy. I won the ski run, and I won the jumping, too. I won the McIntosh Cup for the ski run, and do you know it was presented to me by Governor McIntosh himself. That was quite a race. I fell only once all the way. I nearly lost my steering pole, too.
Was the race run on Red Mountain?
No, Nancy was run on Monte Cristo Mountain. You see, it was too hard for the spectators to get near enough to watch on Red Mountain. The snow was too deep. So the championships were held in Monte Cristo. The jumping was held just above the top end of Washington Street where everybody could see it. The ski race started at the top of Monte Cristo and ran right down through town and ended down at the footbridge over Trail Creek at the bottom end of town. The whole run was about 1.5 miles.
Oh, that must have been quite a run. Didn't you ever have any runs down Red Mountain?
Oh, you bet, you bet. That was my favorite. We had to climb all the way to the top, you know. I once made a record run from the top of Red Mountain down to the Leroy compressor in 3 minutes. Another time, I made it from the top right down to the St. Lawrence Hotel in 7 minutes. I skied right in the door.
Did you ever have any slalom races?
Slalom? What's that?
Well, slalom is one of the events we have now. It's where you go through sets of poles and you have to zigzag in and out and do very quick little short turns.
Oh, no, we had nothing like that. Say, that sounds like a great sport.
Mr. Jeldness, what do you use that big pole for?
Why, Nancy, that's my steering pole. I use it to steer with and also as a brake when I want to stop. Don't you use a steering pole? How do you manage?
Oh, no, we have ski poles today, 2 of them. They're very short and very light, and we use them to not really steer with, but more to initiate our steering movements. Most of our turning is done with the legs.
There you go. Things have sure changed. I don't think we old-timers would stand much of a chance in your day. By George, imagine going down here without a steering pole.
Oh, Mr. Jeldness, that strange-looking harness on your skis, how do you ski with that?
Strange harness? I don't understand. This is regulation harness. There's the toe strap that you slip your foot into, and the heel strap that goes around the back of your overshoes. Why? What do you use?
Well, we have very elaborate harness today. In fact, now we have what we call safety harness. And if you take a bad spill, you come right out of your harness so that you don't get hurt. Our harness is usually made out of metal, and for racing we use a big strap which we wrap around our boots to hold them on very, very tightly.
By golly, you mean that. By Inga, what about skis? Have they changed them too?
Oh yes, they've changed a lot. Our skis are much shorter, and they're narrower, and they're made in factories. They're plastic covered and have a plastic base with steel edges.
By Yemeni, things really have changed. By golly, I sure would like to try equipment like that. I bet I could make the Leroy compressor in 1 minute. By golly, though, I bet I couldn't keep up with you.
Oh, you probably could. Gee, I've heard so much about the Jeldness Tea Party. Please tell me about it.
Ah, the Tea Party. Well, that's what they call it, all right. Some tea party. I'll tell you about it. I made a good mining deal, a good stroke of business, so I thought I would treat my friends to a little celebration. Well, by golly, I said I won't make it too easy for them. I'll make them earn it. So I invite them all to a big outdoor dinner, but they've got to climb to the top of Red Mountain to get it. Well, sir, I invite 25 of them and tell them they must climb all the way to the top. Then I get my men, and we pack great loads of food to the top, and we lit a great roaring fire right near here. By golly, right where we're standing. Then we had everything cooking. Well, I know these boys are really going to be hungry when they make that climb up through the deep snow. And up they come, puffing and blowing. I didn't think some of them would make it, but I had my own men placed at intervals on the hill, and when one of my guests thought he couldn't go any further, my man gave him a little shot of courage. And he went up the hill again. By golly, were they hungry when they reached the top. But we filled them up and spent the evening in great merriment. And then when it came time to go home, I sprung the surprise on them. I gave each of them a pair of skis to go back down. Well, sir, you never saw anything like it. You never heard such hoops and hollers. The evening had filled them with confidence, but that was all. By golly, you never saw such spills in all your life. Down they went, the whole bunch of them. How they made it, I'll never know. They got down all right, but some of them carried the marks for the rest of their lives. Anyway, I took the precaution of having Dr. Bowe's ambulance stationed at the bottom of the hill that night. And by golly, he did a roaring business. I tell you. Yes, Nancy, that was some tea party, right on top of the mountain. I don't think my friends ever forgot it.
Oh, I wish I could have seen it. It must have been murder.
What am I doing here? I'm talking about myself when all the time I want to talk about you. I want to find out how a little girl like you could get to be world champion. Why, in my time, girls did not even ski. It was too hard and dangerous for a girl. I want to ask you these things because our visit is short, and in a few minutes, you must return to your own time. Now tell me, how old were you when you first got skis, and what were they like?
Well, I first got skis when I was very young, as I said before. Our whole family skied, and my dad used to take our skis and cut them down sometimes from longer ones. They were just little wood skis, and we skied in rubber boots with homemade harness, things like that.
Well, they must have been some skis. Did you win any races in them? And how old were you when you first went out on a real ski run? And was it on Red Mountain? And did you start very far up the hill? I guess not, eh?
Well, when I was about 4 years old, they built a chairlift on Red Mountain. Now we can get to the top of the mountain without having to climb. And I was skiing from the very top of Red Mountain when I was only about 5 years old.
Right from the top, from way up here, and without even a steering pole? By Yemen, you must be champion. And when did you go into your first race?
Well, my first race was what I would call now a fun race. It was during the winter carnival, and it was an obstacle race. We had to go through tires and things like that. Then when I was in high school, I started racing for our high school team. We used to compete against the other high schools in the area.
Ah, that must have been fun, these high school races, competing with your school friends against another school. Now, how about getting into championship races?
Well, when I was 14, they had the Canadian Junior Championships at Red Mountain. I was too young to make the team, but at the last minute, several of the girls on the British Columbia team got hurt, and they put me on the team. And I was lucky because my sister won the race, and I came second.
Oh, that was wonderful. You sure showed them how to get on that team. I bet it wasn't long before you found a way to get on other teams, too. Now, where did you go from there?
Well, the next year, I was on the BC Junior team again, and we went to Ontario, to Collingwood. And again, my sister was first. She was the best skier in the country at that time, the best junior. But I fell, and I got hurt.
Oh, you had a spill, eh? Well, I've taken lots of spills, some of them pretty hard. By golly, you're kind of small to be taking hard spills. Did you ever get hurt? This is a dangerous sport for a girl.
Well, the next year was the Olympics, and I didn't get hurt that year. But the year after, in 1961, I broke my leg at Sun Valley.
You broke a leg and still not afraid to ski. By golly, girls in my day wouldn't do that. It was too dangerous. Now, you say you were at the Olympics. You had already made the Olympics team? Tell me about this.
Well, in 1960, I tried out for the Olympic team, and at first I didn't make it. I was just an alternate. Then we went to several races in the States, and I managed to do very well, and they put me on the team. At that time, we had, I think, 6 girls from Rossland competing for the Olympic team. My sister and myself made the final team, and Pat Nora, she was an alternate on the team, and Ginger Edwards and Sandra Osborne were also competing for the team.
Well, that's certainly wonderful. Now, did you go from Red Mountain? It looks as if you've been all over the world. Have you skied in Norway at all?
Well, I haven't been to Norway, no, but I've been to several other places in Europe. I've skied in Austria, France, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany, and of course all over the States and Canada. Some of the mountains I've skied on in Canada, nobody has ever skied before. One year we went to make a movie in northern British Columbia, and it was just beautiful.
Where was that, Nancy? In what part of British Columbia was that in precisely?
Well, that was in the Caribou Mountains, west of Jasper, and these mountains, there have only been about 6 parties have ever been in there. And we went in to make a ski movie, and it was very, very exciting.
You say a movie, you mean a cinematograph. I saw one of those once. A fellow showed it in the Opera House. I'm getting away from our discussion. Tell me, did you train with the team again last year, the year that you went up to northern British Columbia?
Well, of course, I always had to come back and go to school, so that was very, very hard. I missed a lot of school when I was away, and I managed to get through somehow. Then after I finished high school, the team started, the first few years we were going to Europe and training and racing over there and racing back in Canada at the latter part of the year. Then in 1963 I stayed home and trained in Canada. In 1964 I went to the Olympics again in Europe. And then in 1965 the Ski Association took a look at the whole thing and decided that we could train in Canada. We didn't have to go to Europe to train. We could train in Canada and get just as good skiing here.
That's good to hear. Well, why not train in Canada? We have just as good ski hills here, even as good as in my own Norway. Now, where did the team train in Canada? You must have had a headquarters.
Well, yes, our headquarters we're based at Notre Dame University in Nelson. You know, that's only about 50 miles from here. And so, of course, the Canadian national team, as it is called, made up of the best skiers from all across the country. We train during the week at Nelson and go to school there, and then we ski. We spend a lot of our time skiing here at Red Mountain.
Well, I never heard of Notre Dame, but I keep forgetting you live in the 1960s. There must be some change. But I must hurry. I feel our time is running out. Now, what was your next big race?
In 1965, the biggest race of the year was the U.S. National Championships at Crystal Mountain. And we were competing against not only the American team, but also the top Europeans. And again, I got very lucky. I think I could call that luck, and I won that race, and that made me the top woman skier in North America.
And by golly, top woman skier in North America. By Jove, good old Red Mountain must be proud of you. By golly, and you do all this without a steering pole. Now, where'd you go next?
Well, the next winter we went to Europe, and I won several big races there. So that summer, we had the World Championships in South America. You know, it's winter there when we have our summer. And, of course, I was one of the favorites in this race, but I didn't perform very well. I fell in 2 of the races where I had a good chance, and then I didn't do well in the 3rd one. So that made me a little bit discouraged, but all the same, it made me more determined than ever to do well this year. So this year, we went over to Europe again, and I started off the season with 5 wins right off the bat.
That was wonderful. And then what did you do?
Well, these races count towards the World Cup, and this is something new, of course, the World Cup. They have several races throughout the year that count points, and at the end of the year, the person that's won the most races winds up with the World Cup. But you see, the team decided that instead of staying over in Europe for all the World Cup races, we'd come back and try and bring some Europeans here to Canada. So we came back for the Des Moines International. We brought Europeans with us, and we showed the people in Canada what the top international competition is like. After these Des Moines races, I came home to Rossland for the Canadian Championships, and that was a wonderful day for me. The people honored me in a way that made me very, very proud to be from Rossland. They gave me the freedom of the city.
Well, you left the World Cup races to come home to Canada. That's the real spirit. And a freeman of the city. By George, you must be the youngest freeman of any city. It is good to know that our sport of skiing is being recognized. I knew it would be a great thing someday. It makes me very happy, but I have to hurry. I feel our contact is slipping away. In a minute, we must break this strange and wonderful meeting. Tell me, how did you win this World Championship when you missed so many races?
Well, I knew that I would have a chance to win it all along, even though I had missed several races. It's only the best 3 races out of the total of 9 that count for your points in each event. So after the Canadian Championships, we went to Eastern States for a race, and then went to Colorado and won at Jackson Hole. Now, I didn't do too well in the first 2 of those races, and so it wound up that at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the last race of the year, going into that race, I was very, very close. If I won the race, I would win the World Cup. And if anyone else won the race, my rival from France, Marielle Goichel, would have won the cup. The first run of the race was very exciting. It was a slalom. And after the first run, I was in 2nd place. A young girl from France had a very fast run, and she was ahead of me. But she was only ahead of me by 0.05 of a second. Going into the 2nd run, I knew that I had to win. Also, right behind me was Marielle. She was about 0.05 of a second behind me, so it was very, very close. Of course, going into the 2nd run, I normally would have been very, very nervous, but somehow I wasn't nervous at all. I think maybe it was the good old spirit of Red Mountain coming through. Anyway, I ran that 2nd run, and I skied probably the best I've ever skied, and I wound up beating Marielle Goichel by a total of 0.07 of a second, and I won the World Cup.
Well, that's wonderful. By golly, that's really wonderful. That's doing it the hard way. By golly, I knew we'd make champions on Red Mountain, but I never thought there would be a girl ski champion. By golly, that's wonderful. Quick, our time is up. I must say goodbye. Good luck. By golly, our real champion.
Oh, goodbye, Mr. Jeldness. He's gone. And gosh, we're back in the studio.
And there we have had the meeting of 2 great champions. Nancy, what did you think of Olaus Jeldness?
Oh, he's wonderful. I think that a man like this has certainly given Red Mountain something to be proud of in the past.
And now, because the tape recording of this show in common with the tapes of the whole Golden Years series, will be retained permanently as an historic record, we want to insert the following comment. The people of Rossland, and indeed the people of all Canada, are proud of the accomplishments of Nancy Greene. The fact that she not only won the World Championship, but that she did it the hard way is reason enough. However, the charming humility and the sense of responsibility with which she wears the crown are the mark of a true champion, and for this she has won the admiration of the whole world. Canada has never had a finer ambassador. For these accomplishments, she has also been made a freeman of the Golden City. Nancy, it has been a rare pleasure to have had you on this series with us on the Golden Years.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
I see we have 1 or 2 minutes left, Nancy. What plans have you got for further competition?
Well, this summer I'll be going to Chile again in August for some training and for some free skiing. We don't get much chance to free ski during the winter, and I like skiing for fun, so I'll have a little bit of chance for that down there. Then in September, of course, the national team will start its regular program in Nelson with the dryland training, working up to the Winter Olympics next year at Grenoble, France. So I'll be meeting my rivals on their home grounds. Then, of course, we have other major meets next year. The World Cup will be on again, and the Des Maurier Cup in Canada, it is hoped that this will be on the World Cup schedule, and it's also hoped that it will be held in Rossland. So if we're lucky, we'll have a chance to see the top competition in the world, probably including all the Olympic medal winners next winter racing in Rossland. I really believe in the future of Red Mountain and Granite Mountain. It's one of the best areas I've ever seen. I've skied all over, and there really aren't too many places that can compare with it as far as the actual hill and the snow conditions, the weather conditions, and the uphill facilities now are excellent too. It's through Red Mountain and now Granite Mountain that I got my start skiing, and that most of us are getting a lot of our training. And not only has it produced me, but if you look back over the last few years, there have been a lot of other terrific racers coming out of Red Mountain. I hope I don't miss anybody, but there's people like George Mary and Bill Stevens, John Platt, Vern Anderson and Don Berneski, and myself and my sister, and then these have all represented Canada on World Championship or Olympic teams. And then on the national team, we've also had Ginger Edwards, Pat Nora, Sandra Osborne, Barbara Dean, Monica Barrett, Doug Wellick. So you can see there's really been, I have to mention my younger sister Judy too. We really have had more than our share of top racers in Canada come from this area. The last few years we haven't had anybody on the team except me. There are a lot of young juniors up there now skiing. They're very, very keen. Whenever I show up around home, they're just following me every minute. But unfortunately, they're not receiving any coaching, so to speak, where most areas have a full-time coach. They're relying on the receiving their coaching from people like some of the racers that are still interested in coaching. But of course, if you don't have a full-time coach, it's pretty hard to compete with the areas that do. Anyway, these kids are keen, and I think if they get a good coach, a full-time coach, they'll be doing very, very well.
Well, Nancy, you've certainly shown the way, and I guess the future for Canadian competition looks pretty bright then, doesn't it?
Well, I think it really does. The program that we have at Notre Dame is different from any other program. We're basing it at one location. We're together for 9 months of the year, and we get a pretty good chance to ski, a lot of dryland training, and of course combining it with education is very, very important in our society. It's only since we've had this program based at the university that the men have started to really come up. Before then, a lot of girls would keep in competition after the age of 18 because the emphasis on education isn't so important for them. But most boys, when they reached 18 or 19, maybe they would take 1 year off school and race. But when it came to choose between skiing and their education, most of them would pick education. We've had a few exceptions to that rule. John Platt from Trail, he managed to combine it quite successfully and get his degree and keep racing. And Rod Hebron has done the same. But now the men's team is becoming very, very strong. There's much more depth there than there ever was, and they're doing very well. We had consistent placing in the top 10 this year, which we've never had before. And of course, a lot of this credit goes to the coaches. Dave Jacobs was the original coach of the athletic competition, and scholarship program. And now John Platt from Trail is the head coach, and Vern Anderson, who's been the women's coach for the last 3 years, is really tops.
Well, I think, Nancy, that you have set the pace, and it certainly looks like things are going to improve for the boys in the Canadian competitions. And now we're getting near the end of our time. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners while you're here?
Well, I'd like to emphasize once again that we have an area there up at Red Mountain, Granite Mountain, that everybody can be proud of. And I think that this area could develop into a major resort. If the people of the town want it to develop as a resort, there's absolutely nothing stopping it from a skiing standpoint.
Well, we'll hope that the spirit of Olaus Jeldness continues. And now our time is up. Join us again next week for another look back into Rossland's golden years. The part of Olaus Jeldness was done by our very good friend, Percy Halliwell. Now, this is Jack McDonald on behalf of the Rossland Centennial Committee saying so long until next week.
This program is produced by Radio 610 with the cooperation of the Rossland Centennial Committee and the citizens of the friendly Golden City.